In this episode of VikEquip, let's talk about complex sentences.
Hi Vikings, I'm Terry,
And I'm Susan. Welcome to VikEquip.
where we are equipping you, our students, to be successful in the classroom.
In today's episode of VikEquip, we're going to be looking at complex sentences. You might remember that there are 4 different kinds of sentences in the English language. The first is the simple sentence, where we just need a subject and verb and to express a complete thought. Like, I was late for work. I have a subject, I have a verb, it expresses a complete thought. My car had a flat tire. Subject, verb, expresses a complete thought. However, if I write in simple sentences all of the time, my writing becomes very choppy. And so I'll begin to combine some of those sentences into compound sentences. You'll remember that a compound sentence is 2 complete sentences joined in one of 3 ways. We can join compound sentences or make a compound sentence by using a comma and conjunction. I was late for work, comma, and my car had a flat tire. We can use a semicolon. It's a powerful piece of punctuation that joins 2 complete sentences. I was late for work, my car had a flat tire. Some people feel like that's a little bit abrupt, and so they'll add a transition word. I was late for work, semicolon, for furthermore, my car had a flat tire. So we can join these 2 sentences in a number of ways to form a compound sentences. But the key to a compound sentence is that you have 2 complete sentences. Now let's take a look at the complex sentence. The complex sentence is sometimes, it can cause a little anxiety for students because complex typically means difficult or hard. However, these sentences are not that hard to write. When we're dealing with a complex sentence, we simply mean that we have 2 clauses sharing the same punctuation. Now, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. You might say, well, isn't that a sentence? Nope. A sentence is a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. A clause just means it has a subject and a verb, but it may or may not express a complete thought. If it has a subject and verb and expresses a complete thought, we call it an independent clause, meaning it can stand on its own. Think of 4th of July, right? Independence. If it has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't express a complete thought, we call it a dependent clause. It's dependent on something else to make sense. A complex sentence simply means that we have one of each sharing the same punctuation. We have a dependent clause and an independent clause. For instance, look at the example below. I was late for work because I had a flat tire. So now I can see I was late for work. That has a subject and verb, expresses a complete thought. It's an independent clause. We could also call it a sentence. But when I join it with because I had a flat tire, I now have a dependent clause. I can't walk up to you and say, because I had a flat tire. When I do, you're going to say, what? Finish your sentence. It's a dependent clause. These 2 sharing a space become a complex sentence. What makes it a complex sentence? Well, maybe you've already determined it's that one little word, because. Because is what we call a subordinating conjunction. Sub means under. And so what these joining words do is they place one sentence under another. In a compound sentence, we have 2 equal sentences. But in a complex sentence, because of the subordinating conjunction, one sentence now is weaker, has less power than the other. So it's under, it's subordinating. And that's caused by the subordinating conjunction. I like to call these words bully words because what does a bully do? A bully goes around beating people up, and that's exactly what these words do. They take a perfectly good sentence and they beat it up. The way I know I'm dealing with a subordinating conjunction or a bully word is that if I can take the word and put it in front of the sentence, I go to Walmart, and it destroys my sentence, I'm probably dealing with a bully. For instance, after I go to Walmart, what, Miss Hill? Finish your sentence. It now has become a dependent clause because of the bully word. Although I go to Walmart, if I go to Walmart, if is a little bitty word, but it is a great big bully. So anytime you have the word if or even if, In this sentence, you're dealing with a subordinating conjunction, a complex sentence. Let's take a look at some examples. Can you identify the bully words, the subordinating conjunctions, in these examples? The babysitter talked on the phone while the children destroyed the kitchen. If you guessed while, you're absolutely right. I can see what could have been two complete sentences. The babysitter talked on the phone. The children destroyed the kitchen. I could have taken those two sentences, made them simple sentences, compound sentences, but in this case, I chose to make it a complex sentence by adding the bully word while. Before I started college, I was secretly afraid of meeting new people. Before is your bully word. Kristen never buys much when she and I spend time at the mall on the weekends. When is your bully word? What about a number 4? If you guessed because, you're absolutely right. All right, number 5 is easy. Think little bitty word, great big bully. If I go with Rebecca on Saturday, if is your bully word. After the teacher dismissed the class, I turned in my late assignment. Where's that bully word? If you guessed after, you're absolutely correct. I turned in my late assignment after the teacher dismissed the class. Whoa, wait a minute. After is still my bully word, but what did you notice happened in these last two examples? They flipped. It's the same sentence, we just traded ends with the dependent and independent clauses. And we can do that with complex sentences and should do that with complex sentences to add sentence variety. Here's where complex sentences get a tad bit complex. If we have those two clauses, and let's say that the bully strikes in the middle, so the dependent clause is the second half of the sentence. No comma is needed. But if the bully strikes at the beginning, a comma is needed. I like to think about this with my Tinker Toys. So here are my Tinker Toys. This is representing a compound sentence, two equal sentences. But if a bully word strikes, it makes one sentence weaker than the other, one half weaker than the other, right? So if the strong half of the sentence is at the beginning, the independent clause is at the beginning. Is it strong enough to pull the dependent clause through? Absolutely. It'll trail behind. No comma needed. But if the bully strikes at the beginning, now this is my weak part. Is it strong enough to pull the independent clause through? Absolutely not. It needs a comma for a little added strength. Right? So if the bully strikes at the beginning, you must have a comma. How many of you had a teacher somewhere back in school that said never start a sentence with because? Did you know there's nothing wrong with starting a sentence with because? It's not illegal. The grammar police will not pick you up. The reason your teacher told you that was because she or he knew if you start a sentence with because, you must have a comma in the sentence. And so it was easier, all of us struggle with commas, it was just easier to say don't start a sentence with because, and then you won't have to have a comma. But I'm here to tell you, you can start that sentence with because now. Just make sure you have a comma separating the dependent and the independent clauses when you do. I was late for work because I had a flat tire. Because is my bully, it strikes in the middle, no comma needed. Because I had a flat tire, I was late for work. The bully's at the front, I need that added strength, and I do so with a comma. Now look at our examples once again. You can see that when the bully strikes in the middle, no comma is needed. But when the bully strikes in the beginning, there's a comma every time. It's so nice in English when I can tell you, I guarantee you, this is the rule. A bully at the beginning equals a comma in the middle. There's one other kind of complex sentence that I need to mention to you, and that's what we call a complex sentence made with relative pronouns. You know your pronouns, I, you, me, he, she, they, we, them. Okay, so these relative pronouns are not exactly pronouns in that sense. They're what I call the cousins, the relatives, the cousin crew of those pronouns. They are words like who, whom, whoever, whomever, which, whose, and that. They also function like a pronoun. They step in to take the place of a noun clause. So if I have a sentence like Dr. Phelps is a physician, I could say Dr. Phelps is a physician, Dr. Phelps accepts new patients, and have two simple sentences, right? But I'm going to combine those to keep from being repetitive. I'm going to join them with the relative pronoun who to combine it into a nice complex sentence. Like our other complex sentences, we sometimes have to deal with commas. When do I use a comma with a relative pronoun? I use a comma with a relative pronoun if the extra information, the dependent clause, is non-essential. Look at our two examples. Shorty delivered the pizza, which was nice and hot. What's the main thing I want you to know? That Shorty delivered that pizza. The fact that it's nice and hot is extra information. So I'm going to take that relative pronoun and set off that dependent clause with a comma. In the next example, Sonia was the only person who brought flowers. What's the main thing I want you to know? Sonia brought flowers. Now that dependent clause, kicked off by the relative pronoun, is essential information. So I do not need a comma with it. And that is how we put together a complex sentence. I do want to introduce you to one last type of sentence before we close out our time together, and that's the compound complex sentence. Usually students start shaking their head at this point because it sounds so difficult, but can I tell you a secret? This is my only slide for compound complex sentences. I don't have to teach you how to write a compound complex sentence because you already know how. You know how to write a compound sentence by joining two complete sentences with a comma, conjunction, or a semicolon. You know now how to write a complex sentence by using a subordinating conjunction, a bully word. A compound complex sentence just means I have one of each, at least one of each. So when I look at this sentence, because my car had a flat tire, I was late for work, and my class dismissed itself. What about that sentence makes it compound? If you guessed the comma conjunction, you're absolutely right. What about this sentence makes it complex? The bully word at the beginning, the word because, makes this a complex sentence. Now you can understand why there's a comma after tire and why there's a comma after work. One's for the compound sentence, one's for the complex part. A compound complex sentence means I had the potential for 3 sentences, but I've joined them together in a nice way to add sentence variety to my writing. Now you're equipped with all 4 kinds of sentences, and you can go for the A in those essays today. Until next time, Vikings, say